Can't show right now. Also, liberty. We're all about our values, our freedoms, our way of life, and our liberty is being eroded right now. When he votes for men to play in girls' sports, when he votes for critical race theory to be taught in our public universities, that is eroding our values, our freedoms, and our way of life. We're all about no taxes. He voted for the gas tax, the largest tax increase in Missouri history. Right now, because of how he voted, farmers are hurting, the regular person is hurting. We're all hurting out there with the gas tax, with inflation, with food prices, and they don't give a rat's tail. And here's the problem with it. We have money. We have the money in. Do you know right now our budget is 14.6%. We have more income coming in by 14.6%. We have an extra $2 billion at this time this year. We have plenty of money to pay for the gas tax. We have plenty of money, but we're not using it. It's easier to tax people than it is to go and address waste, or it's easier to spend money. We do not have a problem with money. Our problem is managing money. We cannot manage the money we have. We use it wastefully, and it can be addressed, and it needs to be addressed. So being a conservative Republican, less government, and allow the people to have control of their own lives. We need to get government out of our lives.
Mike, would you like to rebut?
Yes, I would. He mentioned farmers, and farmers are hurting. Actually, the Farm Bureau endorsed the gas tax. So they were in favor of the gas tax because they need roads to get their products to town. And he mentioned the pro-life issue and the transgender issue. I have the journal, Senate journal, that proves that I did not vote for CRT. It proves I did not vote for the transgender sports. All that stuff that he's saying is not true, and I got proof to prove that what he's saying is not true.
Scott, would you like to rebut that?
Yes, I have a journal too that people can look at that I've got now at my feet, and I have the journal, February 15th, 2022, and they can look at that too and see where he did vote for it, and I've got his votes.
To follow up on my question,
Yes,
so
sir.
if we will check the journal
Yes, sir.
for both of you, and if either of you are wrong, will either of you admit your mistake when we call to talk to you about it?
Well, let's just see when you call, and we'll see what happens.
I have the journal from that day. It was a motion to lay the bill on the motion to lay the amendment on the table.
Right.
There was no vote on CRT. Nobody voted for CRT. Nobody voted against CRT. Nobody voted for transgender. Nobody voted against transgender. It was a motion to lay it on the table. It was early in session. We were still getting through the process of vetting those issues, and there was no vote on either one of those issues.
Okay. As I say, we'll be calling you, so both of you. All right, we talked about state gas tax. Let's go to it. The state's gas tax has come under fire as the price at the pump has risen exponentially. Do you support the gas tax? If so, why? And if not, how would you fund deteriorating infrastructure of the state's highways beyond the one-year ARPA funding that we're talking about? This is a long-term approach. How would you fund deteriorating infrastructure in the state if it's not through a gas tax? We start with Scott.
Okay, the first thing I would do is I would go and bring an outside audit in. And this outside audit would be an audit that we know that has integrity. I would not use one in the state because I would fear that they would be paid off. So what I would do is bring an outside audit. This outside audit, I would say, let's look at the budget. Okay, these are our must-haves. We must have these things to run this state. And then what we want you to do is we want you to look at our budget and see what can be eliminated, what programs can be eliminated. And then after that, we want you to see what can be reduced and reduce those. And then come back and tell us, okay, this is what we're going to do, all right? And then we would see from that audit what can we address, because I believe that there's a lot of waste there, but it's not being addressed. And then go with what that audit finds and then use that. Because here's the problem, okay? Last year we had a $35 billion budget This year we had a $47.5 billion budget. That's $12.5 billion. Now you would have an argument to have a gas tax if we went from a $35 billion budget down to a 23. I can see the argument. I don't see the argument when you have $12.5 billion extra money from the budget. Where did that money go to? Now I know some of it went to COVID. Some of it went to the FRAs, the Federal Reimbursement Allowance. I understand that, to medical centers and Medicare and all that. I've got that. What happened to the other $8.6 billion? Couldn't that have been used to pay for the gas tax instead of taxing us? Couldn't that been used long term? Couldn't we put in an investment, like let's say a money market, and then draw on the interest just from that and use that money for increased spending for roads and bridges? Couldn't we went and maybe put it in an investment that, I understand, that went and just as inflation went up, made money and all? Couldn't we have done that? But no, we didn't do that. We didn't choose to do that because it's easier to go and tax the public than it is to address the waste.
Mike?
So probably the best kept secret in this room is that I voted for the gas tax. We have the 6th largest road system in the United States, and we're 42nd in funding. Those two things just don't add up to me. MoDOT downsized. I think it was back in 2012. They did a big downsizing, and they've cut costs where they could. But everything costs more. Even before COVID, all the price of materials was going up. Cars are more fuel efficient. And, you know, like I mentioned earlier, it's not conservative not to take care of our road systems. If we just want to, you know, our roads to crumble into gravel roads, I don't think that's the right way to handle our system. And as I mentioned before, John Ashcroft signed that into law, so he's conservative. I think taking care of our road system is conservative.
Okay. Follow-up question for both of you. We'll start with Scott. So would you be in favor of a moratorium on the gas tax until gas prices come down to a lower level?
A moratorium, can you explain moratorium? In what sense?
For a short period of time that the state would not collect its portion of the gas tax.
No, I think we need to repeal it straight out because we have the money available. We need to repeal it and get rid of it. No, I would not agree.
Yeah, I'd be happy to put a 1-year pause on the gas tax. That'd be no problem. But the real problem is Biden's, you know, the issue in federal government. He's shutting down the pipelines. He's not drilling for oil. It's Biden's terrible oil strategy that's hurting us. It's everything that's going on in the federal government that's causing so much problems. That 2.5 cents is not causing the problem. It's the federal government and the President Biden's policies that are causing the problems. But I would be fine with a 1-year moratorium, yes.
Okay. So let's go to the next question. We'll start with Mike. During the last session, transgender issues became a hot button issue among legislators. What legislation on this topic would you support in the next session if you're elected?
Well, basically, I would support that men can't compete against girls. I mean, it's pretty simple. You know, that, you know, you see what's happened with the swimmer. The Leah Thomas is dominating girls' sports. You know, but we have to do it correctly. When it was proposed earlier in session, they said that boys can't compete with girls, basically is what it said. And that would, you know, it would have affected the intramural sports. It was on the fast track bill that had to do with college scholarships, and all it would have affected was intramural sports. You wouldn't be able to play intramural sports. You wouldn't be able to play co-ed sports. So it has to be done correctly. You know, we have to know how we're going to implement it. You know, what the who's going to what the penalties are going to be if there's penalties if something like that happens. It has to be done correctly. It has to be fully vetted.
Okay. Scott?
Well, that's where he and I are different. I don't want to vet it. I don't want to go and implement it. I don't want to do it. No one does. Parents out there do not. They want them out, okay? We don't want men and girls sports at all. It's never been that way. It's not by tradition. So what he is saying, this is what he's recommending. This is the new norm. This is what they want us to do. This is what we've got to accept. We don't have to accept this. We don't want them in girls' sports at all. There's no vetting needing. We need to get rid of it altogether. We need to make a bill into law saying no men play girls' sports at all. And we need to do that. And now they're not only playing girls' sports, they're in their locker rooms. They're in their bathrooms. They have to go and put up with this. It's madness, honestly. That's what he's proposing, madness. What we need is we need sanity to go back in there. Same thing with critical race theory. We need to get rid of critical race theory in the public universities, in our schools, that we have to tolerate this. That's the new norm they want us to accept. We don't want to accept that at all. We want to go back to our conservative values, our freedoms, our way of life like we've always had it. Why do we have to vet this? Why do we have to accept this? We don't have to do that. We need to remain like we are, America. This is not a new America. This is how it's always been America, and that's what we need to do. No vetting, no new norm, as it's always been, by tradition, by how we've always done things. That's what we need to stay with.
So that's where my opponent doesn't understand the process. Everything we do is vetted over there. That's one of the first things they say is when an amendment comes up on the floor, has this been through the hearing process? Has it been vetted? That's how we do things. It has to pass not only our muster, but it has to pass a legal muster. So that's the problem with the way he's wanting to do it. And that's, like I said, that's what happened when it initially came up, was it wasn't fully vetted. It would have banned intramural sports. It would have banned co-ed sports. It wasn't done correctly. So it has to be done correctly.
So let's do a follow-up to both of you. We'll start, since you bring up the subject of vetting, Mike. What is the purpose of vetting with legislation?
So the purpose of vetting is to try to make the best piece of legislation we can. We get people that come and testify. In this situation, they testified in the Education Committee. And we have people that, are in favor of transgender sports. We have people that are opposed to transgender sports. And then, like I said, we got to figure out how it's going to be implemented. Who's going to be in charge of it? Are the high schools going to be in charge of it? Is Michigan going to be in charge of it? Are the teachers going to be in charge? Who's going to take care of these issues? And like I said, we have to do it legally. We can't just say it's easy to say we're just going to ban boys from competing against girls, but that's not the way it works at the Capitol. It has to go through the vetting process. It has to be thought out and thorough, and hopefully it will pass the legal muster if we do all those things correctly.
I've got to say something. Yes, I understand the vetting process. I understand that. But we've had parents come to us. We've called up here. We've emailed. We've gone and seen him. And we said, we don't want this. So why are you going to vet? Why are you doing that? What we want is we want you to make a bill, pass it. We don't want boys and girls sports. We don't want that. We've told him that. But he's determined, let's vet it, find out if the schools can do it, find out if this can happen. And we got people. We have told you over and over and over. And that's why we're all fed up, because no one listens to us. I go door to door. I've gone to thousands of homes, and they're mad and they're angry because they're not heard out there. He is not listening. We want a bill to go into law, stopping that process altogether. What is there to vet? Yes, if you want to vet and hear all the sides, but you're not hearing our side. All you're hearing is your side. And that's why we're upset. That's why the voters are upset out there. We're all upset because they won't hear us. That's why I'm in this race, because no one listens, and they don't hear, and they do what they want to do, but they don't do what we want them to do, the people. Where does the people have a voice in this?
So he just explained that he understood the vetting process, and then he didn't care about the vetting process. It just doesn't make any sense what he's saying. Like, I understand the vetting process, but then he goes on and on. But even the chairman of the Education Committee wanted to get rid of transgender sports as bad as anybody, but she voted against the amendment when it came to the floor, or she voted to lay it on the table, because we needed to talk the issue out. We can't just say it's over. We have to go through the legal process. Like I said, it has to pass the Supreme Court. It has to pass the governor, the House, the Senate. It has to pass all those things. and that's how legislation is made.
Okay, let's go to our next topic. Critical race theory. Critical race theory is the way race and racism influence politics, culture, and law. Much of the consternation about CRT dealt with whether it was or should be taught in public schools. How do you stand on CRT? Do you believe it to be an issue for public schools? Why or why not? And we'll start with Scott.
Critical race theory is really not, it's ideology, okay? And it's taught in schools of all things, and it's called just like it says, critical race theory. It's a theory, but it's a bad theory. Instead of focusing on reading, writing, and arithmetic, we're focused on ideology. Why? Why? It's anti-American, it's anti-God. It negates everything that Martin Luther King Jr. did back in the 60s in one fell swoop, because what it does is he died and gave his life for freedom for all, not based on skin color, and it categorizes people according to their skin color, and that's wrong. It teaches hate. It teaches racism. It teaches discrimination. Why are we teaching ideology in schools? Why are we doing that? Why don't we focus on reading, writing, and arithmetic? We have enough hard times there. I went to a Home Depot not long ago, and a young lady there, I gave her cash for a product, and all she had to give me was 63 cents back, and she had a meltdown. She couldn't count it, and they had to bring the manager over and give me my change. We need to focus on the basics, not on ideology, and CRT is ideology. And what's a shame about the whole thing, this has been thrown down our throats by people that have money, and we've got to address this issue, and it takes a lot of our time and everything, and that's a shame, but it's threatening our children. We're not protecting our children with critical race theory. Not at all.
How is it threatening our children?
Okay, because what you're doing is we're teaching them, we're having them learn something that is anti-American and anti-God, and something they must take that course. Okay, we're forcing them to take this course and to see something that is not based on anything but it's a theory. It's not based on any fact or anything like that. It's someone's personal view. And so we're teaching them that this is an acceptable norm, and it's not an acceptable norm at all.
So, absolutely, I think there are things that we can do legislatively to address the critical race theory. I absolutely don't believe that somebody's superior because of the color of their skin, or somebody's inferior because of the color of their skin. But I also think there's things that people can do in their schools, like they did in Virginia, where people got engaged and they got a new governor. There's things that people can do on their own, but there absolutely is stuff we can do legislatively.
Such as?
Well, it would be another piece of legislation where we would talk about how we would implement critical race theory. You know, would it be, would it, you can totally ban it? There's all kinds of ways of doing it, just the legislative process.
Okay. Let's go on to our next question. In light of the overturning of Roe versus Wade, what legislation would you support in the next legislative session on the topic of abortion? And we'll start with Mike.
So I've been there through this whole last 12 years. I voted for the heartbeat bill. I voted for the pain sensitive bill. I voted for the, when Roe versus Wade was overturned, that abortions would not be legal. I mean, I've done all those things. I don't really know what else there can be. The only abortions that are legal in Missouri are for the life of the mother. I don't know what else I could do. I'm pro-life, and I've always been pro-life, and I prove that by my voting record.
Scott?
What I would address is the simple majority. Right now, Missouri is one of the few states that have simple majority vote. Simple majority can change state law and state constitution. Okay, what happens is people do a petition, and then they have a ballot, and then they bring it for the people, and they can pass that. Okay, right now, Roe versus Wade has been overturned, and we had these bills that turned to trigger laws, and they flipped, and we now have a pro-life state. We have no longer have any abortions. The first thing that I would do is recommend that we go to 66% vote to pass a majority vote, and this is the reason. Okay, now we have a pro-life state that can go and evaporate very quickly, because we could have a simple majority petition, and then by a simple majority they can go and overturn our pro-life state into a pro-choice state, and that's not good. Okay, so we should do 66%, and I agree with my opponent has said. I agree with the legislative process. It's a great way. You do a lot of debating, you do a lot of arguments and everything here. It's not done that way with a simple majority. I mean, who vets it? What happens in that process? You get a lot of pros and the cons, and you see all kinds of stuff, and you really argue the point and everything. And then what you do is you get public input. And then that legislator goes and votes, and he or she is placed on record what he or she voted on. And there's accountability there. But there's no accountability with that simple majority. So for the sake of that, I would go and definitely change that to 66%, and then I would send an emergency clause to Governor Parsons to pass that immediately so that we could go and protect our pro-life stance.
So as a follow-up, don't you find it, I mean, abortion is one issue that, if you were to enact this 66% rule, wouldn't you be concerned that there are other issues out there that that you might not agree with that would make it a hill that could not be climbed?
Right now, that's an assumption, sir. You're stating that as assumption. It's not something on fact. That is an assumption.
Wouldn't you? It is an assumption. You're right. Wouldn't you be concerned? Let's say it's recreational marijuana. Would you be concerned that at that point the scales would be flipped and that would be an insurmountable level for the state to overturn?
I think on that one, it's up to the public, and if the public is as determined as I've already seen them in door to door, I think they can overcome that percentage.
Okay. Follow-up question on the abortion issue. So the Democrats have suggested that the governor should call a special session to discuss contraceptives as well as ectopic pregnancies, emergency pregnancies such as that. Would you be in favor of such a session? And we'll start with Mike.
So, no, I would not be in favor of that. And from what I know about ectopic pregnancies, I think they do endanger the life of the mother. So I think that would qualify for the exception to the abortion ban. But I would not be in favor of a special session for that, no.
Okay. Scott?
I agree with the incumbent. I would not concur with that. I would not want that as well.
Okay. We'll go to our next question. Scott, we'll start with you. Governor Parson has said he will call a special session on the topic of tax relief. What sort of tax relief is realistic and will sustain the state's operation while giving relief to taxpayers?
Well, I stated this before, and I'll state it again. I do believe if we repeal the gas tax, I do believe if we eliminate the personal property tax over a 5-year period, and I do believe if we give all the rebates that he has recommended to all those who have paid into the income tax, I think that would be a big boon in the area with our citizens.
Mike?
So I voted for the largest tax decrease in the state's history. I've already done that. And I voted for the $500 million to go back to the citizens. The governor did not agree with that. He thinks it should be more of a broad-based tax cut, and I'm willing to go back to special session at any time to discuss those issues.
Okay. So let's talk about repealing taxes, because one thing that I'm always curious about, so I think of school districts that exist based on personal property taxes. So if you were to repeal a personal property tax for 5 years, what's the funding mechanism for public schools?
Okay, the same thing I had said before. I would do two things. Okay, on this one again, I would bring an outside commission and do the same thing I stated before with the gas tax. I would go and have them come in, and I would give them a 3-month period. Let's do an audit. These are our must-haves. Now look at our budget and see what we can go and what departments or what programs or what issues or whatever that you can go and cut. Give us a recommendation and what you would recommend we reduce. You have 3 months to do this. Also, I would do a joint commission, and I'd have equal number of Democrats and Republicans and have a Republican lead it, and then I would go and have them go. There are 29 states in America that do not have a personal property tax, and I would tell them the same. You have 3 months. You're going to have your report. When the audit team reports, you're going to have your report. We're not going to move it to the right of anything, but you're going to go out there and you're going to find out how those states, and you pick the states, y'all figure out which states you're going to go to, and you're going to ask them, how do they make their ends, how do they meet their means? How do they do it? I've lived in those states. I've lived in several states. For some reason, they still have enough money to pay for all their schooling. They can pay the police force. They can go and pay for their fire departments and their other departments. And so how do they do it? How do they make ends meet? And then I would take that report and from there then decide what we're going to do to go before we initiate that 5-year plan, and then initiate that 5-year plan from that report.
So I'm in favor of lowering property taxes or doing away with property taxes, especially for seniors and veterans. But we have to remember they fund fire districts, schools, roads, libraries, emergency dispatch services, and I'm not willing to let communities do without those services. If we have a thought-out, reasonable plan to do those things and it functions, then I'm in favor of that.
Next question, we'll go with Mike. When it comes to the Second Amendment, should there be any further restrictions on gun rights? For instance, should training be required before a gun can be purchased? Should there be restrictions on the purchase of assault weapons and high-capacity magazines? Should Missouri have a red flag law that would allow judges to remove firearms from someone considered dangerous to themselves or others?
So I don't really think we need any more restrictions on our gun rights. You know, as far as the red flag law goes, you know, it depends on who's implementing it. If the judge is a liberal or something, you know, I'm not really willing to let judges do that either. You can't just say we have a red flag law and then the person that's implementing the red flag law is a liberal. That doesn't work. So we have to be careful with those kind of things. But I think we have plenty. We already have plenty of restrictions on our gun rights. I don't think we need any more.
Scott?
I'm definitely against the red flag laws. If I would go and definitely, if we could go and prevent those red flag laws from being implemented here in the state, I would go and take whatever means necessary to do to that legislatively. But I'm against the red flag laws. I don't think we need any of those at all. And I have to agree with the incumbent. The judge, it's really dependent on the judge. And so we could have a liberal judge, and they could very well issue that order, and then before you know it, you have a cascading domino effect. I don't think we need any more restrictions on purchases of weapons or on having weapons, because you'll have a domino effect. So they'll start taking this weapon here, okay, because it has 10 rounds in this magazine. Okay, well, we'll take this one too because that identifies with this weapon. Before you know it, they're taking our weapons, and then they're going to go and say, well, hey, we're going to go and start going with the handgun. Well, that handgun can fire 10 rounds there, so we're going to take that handgun. So you have a domino effect here. That when does it stop? It stops when they take all our weapons away. And then we don't go, and then we don't have a Second Amendment, because then we can't carry a weapon because we don't have one. We can't protect ourselves, we can't protect our family, and we can't protect our community. And they have wiped us out of all our weapons to protect ourselves. So we're not abiding by the Second Amendment at all. So it is a cascading effect. No, we don't start it from the get-go, and we don't have one.
Let's go to the next question. Even though the Secretary of State has repeatedly said there were no election issues in Missouri in the 2020 election, he and others in the legislature have campaigned election reform in the last session. What specific concerns, if any, do you have about election integrity in Missouri, and how would you address it? And we'll start with Scott.
Well, the first one right now is that the proposal for that, I think they call it the sample balloting, and that's where it's a scheme that was developed by AOC, favors the Democrats, and what it basically does, it really changes the way we do an election. And so that's being proposed right now. They're going to have a ballot measure on the voting for this year, I believe, in August. And basically what it does is it has multiple rounds of vote juggling. It takes away the primaries. It threatens our free and fair election. It doesn't have a result for several weeks. So that all is called into question. And then it ushers in corruption. So somebody that is not popular, someone that has a few votes, could actually win the whole thing. And so what we need, instead of having something that calls into question our election, we need it fair and equitable in the sense of we need to have transparency, visibility, and we need accountability in elections. Then on top of that also, we need to go and we just passed House Bill 1878, which is a very good thing because what it does, it gives us a picture ID. It gives us the paper ballot, so we're going to get rid of the machines that are hacked. And then what we're going to do is we're getting rid of the ballot box. We're going to get rid of ballot harvesting, and we're banning any private donations or funds for elections. And so that's a very good thing, and that's what we need to stay with and not go with this that is proposed by this ballot measure.
Mike?
So, like my opponent just said, I just voted for all those things. I voted to make sure that people that have an ID, they say they are who they say they are. You know, if you're going to vote, and you need to go to the clerk's office and vote. You can't vote by mail. There can't be drop boxes. You know, we've done all those things. Got the paper ballots. I did that.
So a simple answer with both of you. You believe that the elections in Missouri are, there are no issues with Missouri's elections at the current time, correct?
No, I disagree with that. I think it's subject, I know the machines are subject to being hacked. And so, no, I think the paper ballot is the way to keep it as fair and unhackable as possible, is through paper ballots. If we could have a watermark with it, that would be awesome. But no, not using machines. Since 1996, when machines were incorporated in all U.S. Elections, that's when the corruption really started. That's when things really went haywire. In 2020, we were definitely subject to that. I don't know if you've seen 2,000 Mules, but that pretty much tells you on that. That wasn't with machines. That was with the ballot drop boxes. So we made that illegal, which is very good. But in order to have a fair election, it's got to be transparent. And now I think it's going to be a whole lot more transparent with House Bill 1878. But no, using machines, that's not the way to go. Those machines, their counts have been hacked, and they've had more counts than before. They have more counts than what that county has of people. So by getting rid of them, I think we're going to address that issue altogether.
So which counties are you referring to that's happened in Missouri?
That's happened in all our counties.
In all counties,
Yes, sir.
including Cole County,
Yes, sir.
which does not have a voting machine.
Well, my understanding, it happened in all counties, okay?
Mike?
It hasn't happened in any of the counties that I represent, no.
Okay, let's go to our next question. Last legislative session, the ideological fractures among Senate Republicans stifled progress on a number of party priorities. Senate leadership lay the blame at the feet of 7 senators known as the Conservative Caucus. The caucus alleged the fault lay with the Senate leadership, which is out of step with the Missouri Conservatives. As a participant or an onlooker at the last session, what is your perception of where the fault lay, and what would you do if elected to restore a working Senate environment? And Mike, we'll start with you.
So, as I mentioned earlier, we had 7 Republicans that joined 10 Democrats that filibustered 45% of our session. I absolutely think they're to blame for not getting critical race theory passed, for not getting transgender sports passed, for, as my opponent mentioned, making it harder to have a ballot initiative. There was a lot of things that didn't get done last year because of the Chaos Caucus filibustering. I think most of this, the problem with them last year was they were trying to draw their own maps for congressional races in the future. They filibustered the maps for hours, and then the second thing, besides the congressional districts and their own personal vendettas, or not personal vendetta, but their personal objectives, I think they're not in leadership, and they want to be in leadership, and so that's why they filibustered and caused so much chaos. And I think, just sitting down, I had to work with the crazy caucus with the congressional maps, and I worked through that, and we finally got it done. I think I'm more than capable of doing that.
Scott?
I think really what we need to do is go back to the Republican Party platform. My question is, I wonder if even my opponent has read the Republican Party platform. If we can align ourselves with the Republican Party platform, I think we can go and work a lot of our issues out. But I think we've gotten away from that a whole lot. Our votes are definitely away from the Republican Party platform with liberty and economic prosperity and constitutional guaranteed rights and freedoms and traditions and all. We need to align ourselves with the Republican Party platform. And everybody needs to go and read it. And then they need to swear to it. It would be nice. I doubt they will. But at least have them state, yes, I read that, and I believe that. We're Republicans. We do not vote like Republicans. That's the shock out there. We've heard all the time, rhinos here, rhinos there. Why? We're not voting like Republicans. We're voting like Democrats. And that's what's sad. That's why we're not lined up, because no one is going by the Republican Party platform. And that's the big issue. So if you're going to be a Republican, vote like a Republican. But it's not. Where's our conservative values and our freedoms and our way of life? They're eroding because no one is voting like a Republican. We're voting like Democrats. So it doesn't seem like we have a supermajority of Republicans. Not at all. It looks like we have 3 parties. Looks like we have one party of Republicans that align with the Republican Party. Looks like the other party of Republicans are aligned with the Democrats and vote with the Democrats. And then we have the Democratic Party. It looks like we have 3 parties, not 2 parties. And so we're not really Republicans. Our supermajority are Democrats. And that's what we're tired of. And that we're not represented. And that's the big issue. And so that's why we're not working together.
Let's go to our closing statements. So you'll have a minute to wrap up your thoughts for tonight's forum. So we'll start with Scott.
Oh, is this my closure?
Yes, sir?
Oh, okay. I'm a man of integrity. I'm an Eagle Scout, and I believe in the Scout tenet. The Scout is trustworthy. I graduated from the Citadel, the Military College of South Carolina. And as a cadet, we were taught a cadet will not lie, cheat, steal, nor tolerate those who do. I served in the Army. In my last 19 years, I was an Army chaplain. And I lived by all of those. And as an Army chaplain, I was always with my soldiers. Where they ran, I ran. Where they road marched, I road marched. When they jumped out of planes, I jumped out of planes. When they went and rappelled out of helicopters, I was with them. And that's ministry of presence. And I want to do something different, okay? I want to do town hall meetings to the people during session. And I want to go out there and tell them what's happening in the Capitol. Ask them, how can I help you? No one ever asks, how can I help you? I want to answer their questions.
All right, Mike?
Well, thank you for having the forum, and thank you for everybody coming. I'm very proud of my record of the last 12 years in the legislature. I'm proud of what I've done for farmers as the Senate Agriculture Chairman. I've helped family farmers. I've, cut down on unnecessary regulations. We stopped eminent domain proceedings last year. Been endorsed by the Farm Bureau and all the ag groups, the corn, the soybeans, the pork, the beef, all the different ag groups. And I'm proud of my record on pro-life. I voted for all the things that come up that have been pro-life in the last 12 years. We've done a lot of great things in the last 12 years. And my opponent is smearing my record by saying that I'm not pro-life, I'm for CRT, but I'm a firm believer in the Ronald Reagan's 11th commandment, thou shalt not speak ill of any fellow Republican. So I give my opponent the benefit of the doubt and hope that he doesn't know what propaganda he's really spreading. Infighting only hurts the people that we sent to Jeff City to represent and hurts the Republican Party as a whole. It's time to focus on things that matter, lowering out of control inflation, reversing Biden's disastrous energy policies, protecting our Second Amendment right, the unborn children, and continuing to make Missouri a leader in agriculture, small business, and common sense conservative values. Thank you.
All right, gentlemen. So I appreciate your willingness to come to the forum tonight and share your thoughts. We are going to take a break as we prepare for the next forum for the Senate District 10. For those who are going to stay, please, it'll be just a short break. For those who are leaving, I will remind you that it is an important right that we have to get out and vote. And I would encourage you to do so on August 2nd. And again, thank you for appearing tonight. If there are questions you don't believe that we got to that we should be asking, you can email those to vote, V-O-T-E, at newstribune.com, and we'll be happy to ask the candidates the questions. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Scott, you asked them to put their notes on the floor. Mr. Bernstein read his whole closing statement off of a piece of paper. How come that was allowed?
It was an hour-long thing.
I understand, sir, and you didn't want to put jobs.
So listen, Mr. Rydell, I also didn't interrupt him
Right.
with his opening statement
Right.
when he had his material out.
Right.
So
That's
But he
it was-
followed your
But he followed
directive
the directions.
immediately, and Mr. Bernsketter did not for the rest of the hour. It's on video.
It wasn't open.
It's on video.
You had a hard job, sir. We were just wondering how come he got to keep his
And
notes up there.
we did not make a scene during the whole thing, and we could not, because it was obvious to us. And stop it.
Sorry about that.
How you doing? I'm Les Larson, the president of the Camden County Republican Club. I just want to say thank you for doing this and putting it together. It's interestingly, I'm having both of them at our club meeting a week from tonight.
Oh.
So I get the preview here.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. Good job.
Well. So you want to gather
You did very well. I mean, he just kept on doing
So we will be starting the other forum in about 5 minutes. So you're welcome to go out into the hallway if you don't want to stay for the District 10. And I would ask District 10 candidates, please come forward so we can get you organized.
Yes. You know, who are the candidates for District 10? Do you know who's going to be? And then don't you have one other one too? You know who that is? Do you have three tonight? Just two? Oh, okay. Do you know who they are?
Terrence Fitzwater, Jeff Porter, Mike Carter.
I'm Joshua Price.
Nice to meet you. So I didn't have any bio information about you. I think my reporter reached out to you. Yeah, we spoke. Okay, well, he's on vacation this week, so can you give me a little bit about your bio?
I'm originally from Ohio.
Where do you live now?
I live in Mexico.
Okay. And are you a businessman? What do you?
I work at a local small business auto body shop.
Okay. Okay, that'll be good. This is Lane here. Lane is great. She will be doing our drawing of lots and everything, so that. Okay. So it'll be just a few minutes. She'll be setting up there once we get started. All right. Thank you.
Anyway, I think you'll go to my question, because there are three events going on that evening. I might not be able to do my decision making. At least the one that I'm Yeah, that's the way I think I read it. I think I knew the answer to my question, I was gonna double check. I did that, to make sure I'm not confused. We'll see you later. Seems like you and I are everywhere. Will you call me today? This is too long.
Will that work for you, Lane? Thursday morning?
Yeah, there's I can send you a Zoom link. That works for me.
Sure. Or we could meet. Are you at the News Tribune? Okay. Either way, we can meet in person, or we want to do it.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. Either way, it worked for me.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just
How many? Hey Don. Hey Don. I'll introduce you to Gary.
Hey, Lisa. I'll be there. I'll be right there.
Hey Gary. I'd like you to meet Don Hinkle. He's a fellow editor.
I think we have met.
We have.
Been a few years
It's been a little while.
Yeah, you were redesigning.
But we're close. We're close.
Yeah, yeah. I think I was there when you guys were redesigning stuff.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, I do remember that. I do. Just finished the 20th year.
Yeah?
All 20 of them.
Keep that press rolling.
Yeah. How's business?
Good.
Well, I'm glad.
Good. I mean, holy
Hey,
cow.
I tell you what, this was a really nice crowd for, what, 2 months?
Yeah, yeah.
You get me here, bro. You get me away from,
Sort of
get me away from the
like,
Braves games.
sort of like Clyde. How's that good?
Just like flies, exactly.
Anyway.
It was good seeing you.
All right, hey, Vic, call me. I'm going.
You taking off?
Yeah.
I thought this other thing was starting at 7. Didn't it start at 7, Lane?
Yeah, we're trying to find the candidates.
Oh, okay. I thought about listening, but I don't know.
I'll be talking.
All right, buddy. Good to see you, Don. Hey, did you see that thing I sent you about Thursday night? You gonna come?
Or 4.
There are 4. One is. Are you? Yes. Okay. Okay. You are Mr. Porter, right?
No, Price. Price.
Price, Joshua.
Yes.
Have you spoken to our editor?
Yes, yes, I have. Yep.
All right. Yeah, I recognize you. I got that. It's coming together very well.
Okay, welcome back to tonight's forum for candidates seeking to represent State Senate District 10. I'm Gary Castor, Managing Editor of the Jefferson City News Tribune, and I'll serve as moderator of this forum. Seated next to me is Lane Strassner, News Tribune Community Engagement Editor. She will serve as the timekeeper, and she also organized tonight's forum. Prior to tonight, the candidates were advised the rules of the forum. The forum will include opening statements, general questions for the candidates, and then closing statements. Candidates will be given 1 minute for an opening statement. I'll then begin asking a series of questions of the candidates. They'll have 2 minutes to respond to each question. None of the questions were shared with the candidates beforehand. During the course of the forum, I may ask a candidate a follow-up question in hopes of getting a clearer understanding of his stance. The candidate may also be granted more time to respond or rebut to an answer from a previous question. So now let me introduce the candidates for tonight's forum. To my left is Travis Fitzwater of Holt Summit. He's a businessman and has served previously as a state representative, currently state representative still, sorry. To my right is Joshua Price from Mexico. He works at a small business auto body shop. There are 2 other candidates in the race who are not here tonight. Jeff Porter of Montgomery City, who's a state representative. He's an insurance agent and former mayor of Montgomery City. And Brian Spencer of Wentzville, who's a former state representative and a former school teacher and coach. All are seeking the Republican nomination for the seat. The winner of the August 2 primary will face Catherine Dreyer, a homeschool teacher from Lincoln County who's running on the Libertarian ticket. For the order of the opening and closing statements were determined before the forum by drawing lots. Each candidate will be given 1 minute for their opening statement, and Josh will start us.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name's Joshua Price. I'm originally from Ohio. I moved out here back in about '92. I've got a 8-year-old daughter who I'm active in her life, and I coach her fast pitch softball team at our Optimist Club. I'm a member at the Optimist Club. I'm on the Mexico Park Board. I'm big on working in the community and being active. One of the big reasons why I'm up here and why I'm running is because my town had a pipeline explode right outside our community. What happened that night was wrong, and it needs to be dealt with.
Okay. Travis?
I'm Travis Fitzwater, and I'm honored to be here. And it's been an honor to serve as state representative for the last 8 years. And at the end of this year, will be termed out of the House. Look forward to serving in the Senate. And I think right now what our state needs is we need leaders in Jefferson City. The Senate's a mess, and we need people that can actually go there and functionally help get things done. And I think I'm the best candidate for that. We need to protect our kids, we need to grow our state, and we need to fight for our freedoms, and that's why I'm running for this office.
All right, thank you. So we'll get started with our questions. We'll start with Travis. If elected, what's your number 1 priority?
Well, there'd be a lot of priorities. The 3 things I just mentioned would be the biggest priorities. We have to protect kids. There's kids being, there's mental health issues across our nation and our state. My wife is a licensed professional counselor. She works with kids. What they're having to deal with today is different than what kids have ever had to deal with. In Lincoln County in particular, they have a glut of abuses against children that they're trying to investigate. Don't have enough investigators to even take care of that. So we need to prosecute crimes against children. We need to protect our kids. We need to do a better job of that. And we need to allow more adoptions and fostering. We need to ensure that those laws and statutes are in place to get parents get parents in front of these kids and give them opportunities to be taken care of. Secondly, we need to grow our state. 10 years ago, we lost a congressional seat because we weren't growing fast enough as a population. In 10 years, we're at risk of losing another one. So we have to start now thinking about how do we grow our state? How do we keep people here? How do we prevent them from moving out of our cities that are, have these violent crime issues? And how do we keep them in Missouri? How do we get them to start businesses? How do we get them to invest in our economy and do all the things that make our state great, have made it great? So we need to grow our economy. And lastly, I think we have to fight for our freedoms. We've done that as a state representative. We need to push back against the federal government that keeps getting involved in our lives. And I think those are the important issues that when I go door to door and I've talked to the thousands of people, these are the issues that they really care about.
All right. Josh, same question.
Rural hospitals. Right now, in my town, rural hospitals they're going through some things, and they need some help. We need to help them serve our communities. I believe Fulton's going through some things too, and our hospital's closed down right now. They're working on trying to get back up and running, but that's a big issue. And also, the same company that owns the pipeline that exploded outside of Mexico is the company that controls the Dakota Access Pipeline that goes under our state's river. And we need to stand up and we need to get our voice heard, because I got a firsthand experience that night of how well they take their integrity of their pipeline system.
All right. Next question, we'll start with Josh. When making a decision, how would you balance your personal beliefs should they conflict with the beliefs of the majority of your constituents?
Search for the truth. You've always got to search for the truth, what's best. Sometimes what people want isn't always what they need. And taking time and focusing and really searching for what needs to be done.
Travis, same question.
Well, I've experienced this a lot over my 8 years. You know, often you make a decision and it bothers a handful of constituents, and you'll hear from them. And sometimes you make decisions and they're thrilled about it. So I think you just got to be honest. You got to be able to make a case for why you did what you did. You have to talk to your constituents. You have to communicate. And if you have concerns, you can't be afraid to talk to people about the differences of opinions. And I think that's really important. It's especially important in our society now where we're experiencing such divisiveness in politics. We need leaders more than ever that are willing to disagree but also not write somebody off. And I think that's why the Senate's such a mess, is because we have people that disagree, and they're not coming to the table and saying, okay, but what's the next issue we can't agree on? How do we move forward? How do we move our state forward? How do we do what's best for our state? And so I think, one, you have to be principled. You have to tell people where you stand in a campaign, which is what I've done over the last several months. I've worked my tail off. And you have to tell people where you're at. And then when push comes to shove, you have to stand on what you told people where you'd be, and then you have to explain it. You have to be willing to stand in front of them and tell them why, even if they don't agree with you. And then you have to not write them off. You know, make sure that disagreement doesn't prevent you from being able to work with them on other issues that you do have agreements on. And I think that's what real leadership is. I think it's being able to disagree and honor the other person across from you. And I think that's important for our elected officials now more than maybe ever.
Okay. Next question. We'll start with Travis. The state's gas tax has come under fire as the price at the pump has risen exponentially. Do you support the gas tax, the state gas tax, and if so, why? If not, how would you fund the deteriorating infrastructure of the state's highways and bridges?
Well, I voted against increasing the gas tax. I thought, a couple years ago, Missourians pretty resoundingly voted down a gas tax increase on the ballot. And I thought that was proof enough for us as a legislature to not take it up again 2 years later and say the will of the people was different than what we did. I think it was unfortunate that we increased the gas tax, especially as it's going through the roof. The prices are going through the roof. I think we have, if you looked at the governor's announcement today from his Department of Revenue, we're at record levels of revenues in our state. Our general revenues, I think, are up 20% over last year. So you take all those billions of dollars that we have and you put it and you have to prioritize it into infrastructure. And I think that's how you do it. You don't need to raise taxes. We should be reducing taxes because our general revenues are at record highs. So if our revenues are at record highs and the people of Missouri spend their dollars better than the government does, then we need to give more money back to the residents of Missouri and prioritize the funds that we do have. And we did a record budget this year that was massively larger than last year's budget. So we have money in the budget to put towards these priorities, and we ought to do it that way as opposed to levying a new tax on citizens.
Okay. Josh, same question.
I'm against it. One of the big reasons I'm against it is because of the rebate. How the rebate's implemented, that's not something for low income or middle class families. That's something that hurts them. People that are trying to put pocket change into the tank to try to get from place A to B and put a little go-go juice in their vehicle, that hurts them. Having to keep on to receipts and when you're just putting a little bit of money in at a time, that's gonna complicate things. It's gonna cost them money. They're not the ones that are gonna be able to get this rebate. It's just gonna be a hassle on them, and I don't think that putting a rebate on there to pass it is the right way to go about it. If we're gonna do a rebate on it, we need to do it in a better way.
Okay. During the last session, transgender issues became a hot button issue among legislators. What legislation on this topic would you support if you're elected? Josh, we'll start with you.
If you're born male, you should play male sports. If you're born female, you should play female sports. I have a daughter. Although I think she can compete with males, they're separate. They compete against their own, and that's the way it should be.
Travis?
Yeah, I agree with Josh on that. That's especially males should not be participating in female sports. I think it gives them an unfair advantage in a significant way. So that should just be a very easy ban on this in the state. Secondly, I think my wife's a licensed professional counselor. Like I mentioned earlier, she deals with kids all the time. She understands their issues. And for us to encourage them to take on this gender dysphoria as if it's true for them, and teaching these young kids that their identity is just whatever they want it to be on any given day, I think is a real problem. It's a real problem. We're confusing our kids. Kids are already struggling with their identities without having all of these pressures on them. I think we got to make sure one way to protect kids is to ensure that they don't have doctors telling them they need to change their gender before their body's even fully developed. And if they do that, then doctors and these folks that are participating and encouraging that ought to be held accountable, held liable when these folks do finally get to an age of reason and they realize, oh, maybe I made a mistake here. We should, if you can't buy a gun before you're 18, I don't think you should be able to impact your gender the way that some in our society are encouraging to do so. So I think there's a lot of work we need to do in this space to protect kids, to make sure that they can be kids and not think of these crazy ideas about changing their gender. And I think that's really, really important. And I think to protect kids, that the legislature ought to get involved.
Okay. Travis, next question will start with you. Another hot button issue is critical race theory, which is the way race and racism influence politics, culture, and the law. Much of the consternation about CRT dealt with whether it was or should be taught in public schools. How do you stand on CRT? Do you believe it to be an issue for public schools? Why or why not?
I think anytime you tell kids that they have inherent racism, I think it's a real problem, and it ought to be taken out of schools. We ought to be teaching kids how to think, not what to think, and I think that's really important. And so that's why I voted to ban CRT while I was in the House a number of times, and would do so in the Senate.
Okay, Josh, same question.
We need to teach the truth. We need to search for the truth. We need to and teach it. I don't think we should be telling our kids how to think. Racism did happen. It does happen. It still happens. We can't shy away from that. We need to prevent it. We need to take steps to stop racism, and we need to work on it.
Okay. Next question, we'll start with Josh. In light of the overturning of Roe versus Wade, what legislation would you support in the next legislative session on the topic of abortion?
I'm not for abortion. I don't think a lot of people are for abortion. I think a lot of people are against abortion. People can be pro-life and pro-choice. I think a lot of people who are pro-choice are still pro-life, they want children to be born and to live healthy lives. When it comes to the health and life of a mother, that's a decision between them and God. God wants a personal and intimate relationship with each and every one of us, and for the state to try to get in the way when the mother's life is in the line, that's not our place. That's between them.
Travis?
Yeah, we're a pro-life state. Everywhere where I talk to people in this district, they want to ensure that the rights of the unborn are considered when we're thinking about policy on the state level, which is why I voted numerous times on a number of pieces of legislation over my 8 years that would prevent abortions in the state of Missouri. When I came in, there were 2,000 abortions performed, elective abortions in the state of Missouri per year. In the 90s, we were doing 14,000, something crazy, the crazy amount of children being ripped out of the womb. And I think now we're doing, last year I think we did 100, and this year I think we may do less. And so I think it's important that we fight for the rights of the unborn. And then also, after they are born, I think it's important to also have a policy of being pro-life and taking care of them, figuring out ways to expand adoptive services and foster care services, ways to provide them opportunities in workforce training and scholarship opportunities in college. So there's a lot we can do in that space. It's not just as easy as cut and dry as are you pro-life from in the womb. There's a lot we can do to protect kids and take care of kids that we should be doing, and protecting life. We should be a state that encourages life. And that's really, really important, and it's why I've always voted with a very pro-life agenda.
Okay. Travis, next question. We start with you. When it comes to the Second Amendment, should there be any further restrictions on gun rights? For instance, should training be required before a gun can be purchased? Should there be restrictions on the purchase of assault weapons and high-capacity magazines? Should Missouri have a red flag law that would allow judges to remove firearms from someone considered a danger to themselves or others?
No, we shouldn't have more restrictions on our Second Amendment rights. I don't think that was the intent of the Second Amendment as originated, and I think the government needs to stay out of that. This is why I voted for the Second Amendment Preservation Act last year and was helpful in getting it passed. I thought that was important legislation to push back against the federal government, who is consistently trying to get involved with the rights they don't have the authority to get involved in the state level.
Josh, same question.
No, I'm for the Second Amendment. I think we need to focus on mental health, and we need to really work on providing good and excel at mental health and really providing the citizens what they need.
Okay, so let me do a follow-up to both of you on this question. So if the gun is not the issue, right, which is what the legislation would be to target on it, the mental health issues, the violence issues of domestic violence, for instance, where someone might be a danger to their partner, what is the response we should have as a society to address that issue? Because we don't want that to happen, right? So again, we'll start with Travis.
That's a great follow-up. We should prosecute the crimes that people are committing now. I think in the state of Missouri, especially in cities, they're not prosecuting violent crime. There are gun crimes going unpunished right now. So why increase those for law-abiding citizens when we can't even enforce the laws we have on the books? So I think it's important that we get these prosecutors around the state to prosecute violent crimes, and that is going to cure a lot of the problems. It's typically not the law-abiding citizens that we're having problems with here. It's people with significant mental health issues. And one area I agree with Josh is we need to increase mental health spending in our state. We've got to figure out ways to get kids at an earlier age resources because they're struggling. If you go to any of the schools, you meet with the superintendents and the teachers, they have a huge mental health need in the schools. And I think the way to attack that is to provide as many resources as possible. It's also an unfortunate symptom of a broader problem, which are the breakdown of the family in two-parent homes. We need parents in homes. Kids that have two parents at homes succeed on a much larger level and are given a major advantage compared to kids in single-parent homes. So These are all symptoms of a larger societal problem that we don't often discuss, but we have got to encourage families. We've got to encourage two-parent homes. We've got to encourage these healthy relationships. Those are the things that springboard kids into the future and are very important. But we also have to protect our communities. It's why I got endorsed by the Missouri Fraternal Order of Police, because they know I'm the guy that's going to vote to protect our communities and give them the resources they need to fight violent crime in our communities. So I think all those things are really important, but taking away Missourians' rights, I don't think is the right path.
Okay. Josh, same question.
Encouraging families. We need families. We need people to understand the importance of what a family is. We need men to stand up. We need men to be the dads that they need to be. There's a lot of them out there doing that, but we need it across the board. We need them all to stand up and take care of the responsibilities that they need to take care of.
Okay. Josh, next question will start with you. Even though the Secretary of State has repeatedly said there were no election issues in Missouri in the 2020 election, he and others in the legislature have campaigned election reform in the last session. What specific concerns, if any, do you have about election integrity in Missouri, and how would you address it?
Missouri seems like a pretty good state. Where I live, I'm not seeing any of those problems. One issue is we need to make sure that IDs are easily accessible. It is in Audrain County. It's easy for me to go get a new ID when I need it, but we need to make sure across the board that everyone can go and get one when they need one. And that's the big issue that I see that we need to focus on.
Travis?
Missourians care about election integrity. It's why we passed a really good, very, very broad omnibus election bill this last year. I think it was House Bill 1878. The governor recently signed it, but it banned a lot of the things that people were concerned about that happened in other states that weren't necessarily a factor here, but could be in the future. Ballot harvesting, ensuring that these liberal groups aren't paying for our election process. There was photo ID piece into that, so we can ensure that people that are voting are Missouri residents. There were a number of election integrity pieces in there that were really, really crucial. And I think a really good, smart election integrity bill, and it just secures our elections. Missourians want to know that their elections are secure, and we did a good job of that in 2020. We're one of the few states that we passed a short-term bill then to ensure that during the pandemic that we'd have secure elections. We did that again with this bill, and I think it was an appropriate way to take on the challenges of election security, because Missourians want to know that their ballot is secure.
Do you believe that Missourians' ballots currently are secure?
Yeah, I think they're more secure now. I think there's more assurance that they will be going forward. They already were, like I mentioned, but we had to move the ball forward, and that was photo ID, which the courts have thrown out a number of times. I've voted for that since I've been in the legislature. I think you ought to have an ID to vote. It's not that hard. We pay for it. We take care of it. You know, when we pass these bills, we ensure it's not hard to get an ID, and that is paid for by the state if that's the help that you need. So I think it was a very intelligent way to go about it.
Travis, we'll start with you. Governor Parsons said he will call a special session on the topic of tax relief. What sort of tax relief do you believe is realistic and will sustain the state's operation while giving relief to taxpayers?
Yeah, I'm excited that the governor is focused on tax reform. We have this glut of money in the state budget that we ought to be giving back to Missourians. This is why I voted for the tax credit that he actually vetoed, so we can come back and do a broader reform. I think the income tax is a tax that hurts our economy. I think it's too high compared to other states that are surrounding us, even though it's ticking down a little bit because we've passed some tax reform in the years I've been in the legislature. But I think it should go further. If we're getting record amounts of revenue, even during the pandemic, then I think we ought to be giving more money back to Missourians so these hardworking Missourians can start businesses. They can take care of their families. They can pay for their mortgages, and they can take on the costs of inflation and gas prices going through the roof and all of these things that they're up against. And even more so, the seniors and retirees in our state that are on fixed incomes, they're hurting really bad. When I knock their doors, they're freaking out about inflation, gas prices, grocery prices. All those things are hurting some of our most vulnerable. So we need to do whatever we can to get more money back in their pockets. And so I applaud the governor for wanting to do a broad tax reform package and look forward to seeing what that looks like.
Same question, Josh.
The gas tax is one of them. With the rebate with that, if we've got record money like you're saying, yeah, we need to help. I'm a less than minimum wage auto body mechanic. I understand what the people are going through. It's tough out there. They need help.
Okay. The last legislative session, ideological fractures among Senate Republicans stifled progress on a number of party priorities. Senate leadership lay the blame at the feet of 7 senators known as the Conservative Caucus. The caucus alleged the fault lay with the Senate leadership that was out of step with Missouri conservatives. What is your perception of where the fault lay, and what would you do if elected to restore a working Senate environment? Josh.
Laying fault and laying blame isn't going to help. We need to stop bickering, start looking for solutions. We need leaders. We need to come to the table, sit down, and figure out how we work and fix all these problems.
Travis?
I think there's blame to go around with everybody. I think what's missing is civility and the ability to sit down and disagree and talk and work through issues instead of taking my ball and going home when somebody's frustrated. So instead of blowing up the whole process because you're offended by some small thing, maybe the best thing to do, the best thing for the state is in humility, put your ego and your pride away, whether you're in leadership or you're a conservative caucus, and say, okay, how do we move forward? How do we do what's best for Missouri? How do we come to some conclusion that's going to be good for the state, even if I don't get everything that I want? Instead of saying, if I don't get everything I want, I'm shutting down the Senate, we should sit at a table and figure out how do I persuade enough people that what I want is the right thing for the state of Missouri and serves her citizens well. And so I think we need leadership in a big way in the Missouri State Senate. We need it bad. And so it's very, very important that we send the right people to Jefferson City that can handle those leadership needs. That's why I think I'm that person. I have great relationships across the board with conservative caucus members and Senate leadership. I've got good relationships in the House and the Senate with the governor and the folks that are governing our state. And I think that's important to get things done. You have to have those relationships to get things done. And disruptive members of the Senate aren't helping, and the reactions from Senate leadership isn't helping necessarily either. So I think there's a lot of blame to go around, but that's behind us. We've got to look forward and say, how do we fix it? And that's sending the right leaders to Jefferson City.
Okay. So Travis, you mentioned earlier one of the concerns that you raised was population, that Missouri needs to become a growing state. So how do you achieve that?
I think one is tax reform. Secondly, you have to encourage entrepreneurship. How do you figure out ways to get Missourians to take the risks, to start businesses and start hiring people? Over the last 3 or 4 decades, all net new jobs have come from startups, from new companies. They don't come from the big companies that are established. They come from new companies that are creating new jobs. And so we've got to encourage entrepreneurship. We've got to teach it in school earlier on. We've got to tell kids, start a lemonade stand, learn what it's like to earn $1, what it's like to write a paycheck, to figure out how to do profit and loss, and learn those life lessons that our economy was built on. The United States was built on entrepreneurship. So we've got to do that. We've got to be a friendly state for businesses and for entrepreneurs. We also have to fix the crime problem in the cities. St. Louis has lost population in droves, and in large part because of violent crime. I think we've got to make our communities safer. We've got to make sure citizens can believe they can live in an area and feel safe. That's very important. There are a lot of things we can do and we need to do, but a lot of it revolves around economic development and workforce development. And finally, I think in workforce development space, how do we provide as many opportunities as possible to not only kids but adults to get the training they need to go fill these jobs that are available across our economy? Every business that I talk to right now is dealing with people, has a people problem. They don't have enough people. So we've got to get people trained to go in and do these jobs in our communities that all these businesses are begging for. They need people. And so we need to get training. We need to do everything we can to ensure that there are training opportunities for adults in the state of Missouri as well as young kids. So we've got a lot of work to do, and I look forward to being a part of it.
All right, same question, Josh.
I'm not worried about the population increase. It's coming. People are going to come. What we need to do is we need to be prepared for when they're here, when they come. They're coming. It's just a matter of if and when, and we need to be prepared for it.
Okay. We're going to go to our closing statements at this time. So, Josh, we'll start with you.
Like I said, one of the big reasons why I'm running is because of that pipeline explosion. Waking up in the middle of the night, having to tell my daughter that we needed to get to the basement because I thought that was our best chance to survive. That's not something we should have to go through. That was a scary night. I live about a mile from where it happened. Waking up, sitting up out of bed, looking out my window and just seeing a massive ball of fire. It's not something we should have. That's not something that our citizens should be going through. I'm calling for President Joe Biden to file criminal charges against Energy Transfer LP for violating the Balding Golden Eagle Protection Act. That's what I want done.
Okay. Travis?
The Missouri State Senate needs leaders. At the end of the day, they need folks that can step into the vacuum of leadership there and build the relationships necessary to get things done that our community and our constituents are asking for. And I think I'm that person. And I think I would ask for Missourians to vote for me on August 2nd in the 10th district, because we're going to bring leadership to the table to protect kids, grow our state, and fight for our freedoms. And that's the kind of legislator that people are looking for. When I talk to the thousands of people that I've talked to, it's crucial to have those tenets as a part of our campaign. And we really think we're the best option for that. And the Senate is begging for leadership to come in and right the ship. So I think I'm that candidate.
All right. Gentlemen, I appreciate you coming tonight to take our questions. I would encourage those who are watching or here in the council chambers that you can send questions to us and we will get them to the candidates and then publish them in editions of either the Fulton Sun or News Tribune. You can send those to vote@newstribune.com and we will be certain to get with the candidates and get their responses. So again, I thank you for coming tonight. In parting, I would just encourage those who are listening to get out and vote on August 2nd. It's an important civic duty that you have to choose your leadership to help Missouri in